Fans, we are live on the flagship weekend show of the Cheap Heat Productions podcast empire. My name is Jack Kilby, No Gimmicks Guy, and I'm here today to interview an individual who really has captured a lot of the attention of the wrestling world as of late. As you can expect, he probably was deluged with requests to have a podcast given his knowledge base for years and years. He finally has one. He is known as the godfather of extreme. We're going to be talking about not only his podcast, but his excellent book that is extremely insightful, one I enjoyed a great deal. And I would be talking about none other than the legendary Tod Gordon. Tod, thanks for coming on the show.
Jack, it's such a pleasure to see you again.
Absolutely. It was actually the highlight of my trip to Philly for TWA One and Done, May the 3rd, to go down, and you were gracious to meet myself and an associate at Carver Reed. So much history there, covered extensively in your book. But I think it's since we're talking about a brand new vehicle, can you talk about how you signed to do a podcast? It's called, appropriately enough, Tod is Pod, and what your mission is for the show.
Well, I was approached by a gentleman by the name of Derek, and he said to me, I do Eric Bischoff's podcast, and I'd like to do yours as well. I'm very good at it. I can make sure you're treated with respect and you get a chance to air your views out. And I said, I've been asked, God, 20 times already to do a podcast. He said, but I'm not just anybody. I'm telling you, I'll do right by you. I'll do justice by you. I said, well, why don't we tape a pilot and see how we both feel about it? He said, no, I want to either go for it or not go for it. And I said, all right. I've got nothing to hide. I'm pretty much upfront and honest with anybody who asks me anything, whether it be a fan or somebody in the business. So let's go for it. In fact, we had brought Bill Alfonso in for the first two episodes.
Yeah. What a fabulous guy that is. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him as well. What a storyteller as well. Are you going to go through your history in terms of the wrestling scene in Philadelphia, or are you gonna do you think you're gonna branch out to because I saw what seemed to be a teaser from your social media about the events that happened last night? Are you going to talk about modern wrestling at all, or is it pretty much open?
No, it's open. I'll do anything back from the TWA guys to when I was growing up watching, George Animal Steel up to last night's teach show, anything wrestling. And if there's something else you want to talk about, I would do that too. I'm open to anything.
That's great. Well, I'm definitely subscribed and will be keeping close tabs on that. I originally, when we spoke before, your book had just come out. Of course, I've since demolished it. It is called Tod is God, the authorized story of how I created Extreme Championship Wrestling with the great broadcaster Sean Oliver. First of all, were you surprised at the reaction? I haven't seen a negative review of the book at all. A lot of people commented on what struck me reading it, and that was your brutal honesty and your perspective, which I don't think has been captured hitherto before in a pro wrestling book.
Well, that was something, again, I was kind of prodded into by Sean. We would talk, and I would tell him stories from the day, and he'd be laughing. He'd say, oh my God, we've got to do a book. And I said, I'm not doing a book. You got to do a book. He said, no one knows what your real history in the business is. I said, all right, well, that was 25 years ago. So they don't know by now. Oh, well, I can live with that. He said, no, we got to tell your story. We really do. He said, I would love to get the word out there about what really happened and when, so people would stop calling it Paul Heyman's ECW, and they would call it, what it really was, your ECW that you eventually sold to him. And then we talked about the fact that there's so many untold stories because everything that ever came out about ECW was a WWE produced project. And it always ended with, in the rise and fall of ECW, this always the unauthorized story. Why is it the unauthorized story? For every one of those projects, they never interviewed me once. How are you going to tell the history of ECW when I'm the only person who was there from the beginning? There's nobody else who was there back then. They never interviewed Shane Douglas. They never interviewed Joey Styles. They never interviewed any of the people that are also there from the beginning. They're instrumental to the growth of the company because they didn't work for WWE. So it was going to be a slanted version, and everyone they kept putting out there making money and selling them hand over fist, and none of them ever giving the true, accurate story. So I said, okay, you're right. It's time to change that. And therefore, we did the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You were inspired to start Eastern Championship Wrestling, but you had a lengthy, and this is one of the parts of the book that I found interesting, your business side in terms of the family business, the store, Carver Reed. I'm wondering how that approach, because you didn't have a traditional sort of entry into the business as a lot of promoters did. You were coming at it from a business perspective. Can you talk about how you first got your toe in the water with I believe it was Mr. Goodhart that we were just talking about TWA, and how that approach of being a business person influenced your running of the promotion?
Well, Joel had a radio show on a sports channel here in Philadelphia every Saturday morning. I caught it one day just flipping through the channels, and I was shocked because back then in 1989, whatever it was, no one talked about wrestling publicly. If you were a fan, you didn't even say it publicly. Everybody was a closet fan, especially professionals, lawyers, doctors. They all watched it. They would never acknowledge that they did because it was like a dirty word. That's changed so much now that, you're almost something wrong if you don't watch it. That's how much it changed since I first started. So I was a fan, and I'm listening to Joel, and he said, "Oh, I can get any wrestler for an appearance in your store. I can get any WWF superstar, any WCW star. I can get Ric Flair. I can get you Greg Valentine. I can get any name you want to come up with." So I said, well, first of all, I started to advertise with him just to get my foot in the door somewhere. Because I was such a fan since I was born almost. I was a fan of wrestling. Never missed it. Would stay home on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon just to watch that hour of WWF television. So I said, sure, I'll do that with you. And I got Missy Hyatt of all people. Why? Missy Hyatt was gorgeous. And, I don't think Greg Valentine was going to bring anybody to my store. So I brought Missy in. She came in full, and she was stunning back then. I mean, nothing I didn't say about her now, but she was drop dead gorgeous. Brought her in the store, and she drew a crowd, as I thought she would. Of course, she was laying across my counters and carrying on like only Missy can. She really was the walking riot. And she brought a nice crowd in. So from there, I started to advertise with Joel, and I also became his ring announcer. That was my foot in the door. When Joel went under, I figured, okay, well, that was it. At least I got a little taste of it. I got to meet some stars. I got to hang out with the guys, whatever the case may be. And then Bob Ortiz, the ring announcer, Larry Winters, his booker, and Steve Truitt, his music guy, called me up and said, can we come in your office and talk to you? I said, sure. I didn't know why. They came in and said, we don't want this to end. Joel may be out of business, but we want to at least still run our monthly bar shows, Mike Schmidt's sports bar. It's just the guys have nowhere to work now. That was it. Joel being out just killed it. If you can get a license, we'll do everything. I'll do the ring announcing for free. I'll do the booking for free. I'll do the sound for free. I mean, you can't lose money. So we just need someone to get a license. And to do that, you had to get a bond, which meant putting up something that was worth, say, $100,000, but it only cost you maybe $500. But I owned a house, so I could get a bond, and we did. And from there, we started running Mike Schmidt's sports bar, which held maybe 100 to 150 people. When you sit on the top turnbuckle, your head's hitting the ceiling. I mean, it's that kind of a place, but everybody's working again. So that's how that started. And from there, of course, people started saying, hey, why don't you try this place? Don't love to have wrestling there. And I started to formulate a business plan, never thinking it was going to be a full-time career, or never thinking it would grow into what it grew into, obviously. We were, it's 150, 200 people a month watching it. Then all of a sudden, it snowballed. That snowball just got bigger and bigger, and I couldn't stop it. And then once we were approached to do TV, how could I say no to that? And from there, it really became my obsession, trying to make ECW big. Not as big as it became. I wasn't thinking pay-per-view and things like that. I was just thinking running, regular buildings and doing high schools and gyms and things that would draw enough people to make it profitable.
Did you when you're it really plays out in the book that it was sequence of events falling into each other, and it kind of grew as you went along. Did you have like an end goal or a vision for the promotion? You certainly probably didn't think it was going to be revolutionary and industry defining. Or I noted when Eddie Gilbert came on board, things started to really fall into place. How did that play out for you in your head? Were you caught up in going show to show, or did you have an end goal in mind? And how much of an influence was your relationship with Eddie?
Well, I did not have an end goal in mind at all. I really was living in the moment, and I was really concerned about how to give. I hated wrestling at that point, and I'm telling you, I'm the guy who grew up like I couldn't get enough of it. Bruno Sammartino, and everything I saw was so real and so snug that you just believed anything you saw. And maybe that's being a child, who knows? But I was a real hardcore fan. But the product just became disgusting. It became a cartoon. In fact, they had a Saturday morning cartoon, which tells you all you need to know. But with the icing on the cake, watching the show, and it was the Ultimate Warrior and Papa Shango. Papa Shango's on one side of the arena, Ultimate Warrior's on the other side of the arena. He picks up his lamp and does a spell, and Warrior starts throwing up. Well, watching that made me want to throw up because I just can't watch this anymore. How can anybody watch it and say, oh, I believe that? I wanted to put on shows that I believed and were real. I wanted to get that feeling back where I loved it again. And if I was going to love it again, there'd be a lot of other fans out there who said, yes, that's what we're talking about. It got to be garbage. Now this is real. These guys are out there hitting each other with trash cans and killing each other. And my thought about bringing Eddie in was, in Memphis, that's where we did that stuff every Saturday. You know, they came out with the Moondogs or the trash cans and the weapons and the Eddie trying to run Jerry Lawler over the car. Things that, like, you just didn't see anywhere else. That's what I wanted to bring up here. And that's why I brought Eddie in to be the booker. And that's exactly what he did from day one. It was a hardcore product. Didn't become hardcore when it became extreme. It started out hardcore. And that was the goal. And we didn't use many big names. I only used maybe three. Ivan Koloff, who was a drive away. Jimmy Snuka, who had moved to the area. And Don Morocco, whose wife had something to do with the airlines where it didn't cost anything to bring him in. Well, those are three pretty good names to start out with. They were all big-time names. And I was able to use them at a really great cost. So it became something that I could still do, use those big names to help elevate my guys, and at the same time, you know, put on a product that people liked and would pay to go see. But never was there an end game. It was just really going week to week and month to month until we got hit with a TV offer. When that happened, then all bets were off and everything changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seemed to be a real organic kind of development, which often is the best. We're going to talk about Paul Heyman quite a bit because you go into detail really for the first time in the book about Paul. You describe him as both a blessing and a curse. And I know in your book you stated that he initially was involved in Eastern as an agent for, not an agent, but a representative of, he was doing work for Crockett when Crockett was talking about starting another promotion, et cetera, and then it kind of morphed into there. But you're always consistent in the book in your praise of his mind and his creativity. Can you give an example of, and I think I know what the lows would be, but the high point of your relationship with him when everything was just clicking?
Well, we became best friends. I mean, we would talk 7 days a week, God knows how many hours a day. We had a lot in common in the way we were raised. Even though he was in New York and I was in Philadelphia, our backgrounds were very similar. So there was a natural connection there. And he had a great sense of humor, and I like to think I have a good sense of humor as well. So we just hit it off that way. Originally, he was there as just someone to help Eddie with the interviews because he wasn't going to leave with Crockett. That was the whole idea. And then one day he went to me and he said, you know what? The hell with Crockett. I'm staying right here. I love this ECW. I love you. I want to work with you. I don't want to work with Crockett. The hell with him. Of course, I found out like 2 weeks later that before that ever happened, Crockett said he was not going to do the promotion anymore. He's going to just give it up. But Paul used that opportunity to cement himself with me, which was fine because I was happy to have him. I have people say to me to this day, "Are you sorry you ever brought Paul Heyman in?" I answer the same way every time. No. I mean, if I didn't, we never would have grown to where we were. I wasn't going to be able to do what he did by myself. And quite honestly, I don't think he could have done what he did with that locker room without me. We were a good team. We really did help each other out a lot. But am I sorry? No. I don't think I'd be doing this interview right now had I never brought him in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Good point. Do you think it would have been different? Because I know Eddie was really doing some really groundbreaking stuff, that whole King of Philadelphia deal, and he was a brilliant mind in his own right. Do you think it would have been different if Eddie would have stayed or come back when he wanted to? I know he was fighting his demons then and was notorious for leaving territories, but could you have seen ECW Eastern growing under both Eddie and Paul kind of in the same sort of role, or would that have melted down?
I think it would not have been as linear, to be honest with you. Eddie had a style. There was going to appeal to so many people, and there was going to be that set audience, which was going to be a nice size audience, but that was going to be the limit of it. Paul had his finger on the pulse of what was happening with young people, with the music. I mean, Eddie didn't listen to that kind of music. He was from the South. Paul knew the grunge. He knew what was going on. He came up with the word extreme before anybody else had come up with it. He said, "You're going to hear in a year from now, there's going to be extreme sports, extreme this, extreme that. What do you think about changing the name?" And I said, "Extreme? I don't know." He said, and we talked about it. I said, "Listen, it hasn't been wrong yet. So let's do it. Let's call it extreme and then make the whole transition with Shane, et cetera, et cetera." And I was letting him do that because he had his finger on the pulse. So where Eddie would have taken us so far, he took us to the next level. Mm-hmm. And because I was there to control him at the time, not let him burn the building down, so to speak, say, "No, we're not doing that. Here's what we'll do, but not that." And that kept us, still within the mainstream enough to grow without being kicked off of any networks.
Mm-hmm. Your roster, you had some really tremendous talent there. We all know the classic names, some of which were dating back to TWA and were from the Eastern to ECW transition. How did you identify or nurture talent that set because it really did set ECW apart from WWE and WCW. I know some historical commentators like to say, well, they were the misfits that didn't fit in anywhere else, but I don't think that's true. I think they were ahead of the curve in many ways, and obviously you were a big part in terms of that development and nurturing of the roster.
Well, a lot of the guys were guys that couldn't get work elsewhere because they had burned too many bridges. Someone like Hawk. Who else could I think of in that vein? Well, Terry Funk could work anywhere he wanted to, of course. And he's really what grew us. Even more than Eddie, even more than Paulie, what really grew us was Terry Funk. Because he was a name that people knew all over wrestling. Mainstream, hardcore, everybody knew Terry Funk. And without him, Shane Douglas doesn't go to where he went to because he got Shane Douglas over. He got the Public Enemy over. He and his brother Dory coming in and working with the Public Enemy. He elevated them to main event status, and certainly elevated Sabu. I mean, without him, those three groups, those four people, never would have become the stars they did. He was so generous and giving that way. He made sure he knew he was going to have his heat. He knew he was going to come back and still be over, but he needed people to work with. And if they weren't over, then it didn't do him any good to work with them. So he would elevate them during the course of the matches, and they all became main eventers, and they never would have. I don't think they would have without Terry to do that.
Mm-hmm. I've got a question here. I think I know what the answer is. Ibzan is asking, were you in the building when Paul got inducted at the Hall of Fame in Philly? And after you answer that, I've got a part B to that one.
No, I was not. I think we had a show that night, if I'm not mistaken.
Would you? A lot of fans are talking about Hall of Fame, and of course, your name comes up because of the whole legacy of ECW. One fan sent me a question asking if you would be open to that for WWE? I'm talking about, and if that was to come about, who would you want to induct you?
Wow, what a good question that is.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Probably the Sandman. I mean, he's my best friend and has been since day one almost. It's an odd coupling. No one understands it. But it's another thing. He was a Philly guy. A lot of the same interests. We loved the four sports, the main sports. We'd argue about different teams and different things about sports all the time in the car. I mean, I just spoke to him yesterday. I mean, I speak to him all the time, always have. And I think, yeah, he'd be the guy I would be most appealing to me to get up there and induct me if I were to do that. Would I do that? I don't think it's an issue because I don't believe I'll ever be asked. I mean, if I wasn't asked to even answer questions for the rise and fall of ECW, I don't think they're going to bring me too soon to make me part of their Hall of Fame. And that doesn't hurt me because I was never part of the company. I mean, if there's an ECW Hall of Fame and I wasn't asked to be in it, that might sting. But, it's like saying, what's your big federation in Canada right now?
Right now, probably Maple Leaf Wrestling. It's
okay. So someone said someone said, "Are you upset about not being inducted into Maple Leaf Wrestling Hall of Fame?" And I said, "No." So to me, that's the same as the WWE. To be quite frank with you, I don't see that as universal. I see it as them bringing their guys in, which is what they should do. And even there, they're still picky. I mean, if somebody had an argument with Vince or whatever, like they're not eligible to come in the Hall. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's so subjective. It's like someone's voting on this. There's one guy going, who will draw a crowd? Who will draw, some people to the Hall of Fame ceremony? So it's hard to, it's a work. So it's hard to get upset about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with TKO doing what they're doing with the budget, I don't think we're ever going to see a physical Hall of Fame either, which is too bad.
No.
Why, since you brought up the rise and fall of ECW, that massive DVD that probably, created the Renaissance period in the mid 2000s for the original ECW. What do you know why? Like, you're a key figure in the history of that company. Why you weren't asked to be a part of it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know who had any say in there in that matter. I don't know if it was Paul. I don't know if it was Vince. I don't know who would have been. But whatever reason it was, they just did the project, and I heard about it when it already came out.
Strange, very strange. Your book contains a lot of amusing, unfiltered stories from the locker room and road trips. Is there one untold story from the early days that didn't make it into Todd is God? For whatever reason?
I'm sure there is, because we had to cut that book almost in half from all the material he had. They only wanted X amount of pages, and we had almost double that amount in stories and tales and things like that. So there were a ton of them, but off the top of my head, I wouldn't come up with one that quickly. But yeah, there's a lot of material. Enough we could have done a second book, but I didn't want to do that.
Is there a potential for unreleased chapters or whatever to come out one day?
That's always a possibility, because he has so much, material, as I said. We've had conversations, to be honest with you, with other people doing projects related to ECW still that are on the table right now. We'll probably use a lot of those stories that haven't been told yet in that project, assuming it comes about, but we are in discussion for sure. Sean and I both.
Cool. Do you, without debate, ECW heavily influenced the Attitude Era, and your work, especially starting in Eastern, reshaped the landscape of professional wrestling. Do you think that ECW gets the credit that it deserves for really waking up the business and shifting away from some of the stuff that you earlier talked about, or do you think Vince's WWE, ECW did some damage to the legacy? No,
I actually think, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but I actually believe that in this case, we really do get enough credit. I mean, they're always talking about the Attitude Era emanating from ECW, then bringing in Cactus Jack, then bringing in Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then giving him Sandman's beer gimmick. I mean, come on. So a lot of they do acknowledge that. Eric Bischoff can say what he wants, but they obviously took half our roster away. So they obviously were influenced by us as well. And I don't think anybody denies it. I mean, if you listen to Russo or even Tony Khan, who's used to be in our front row watching the shows. I mean, a lot of the wrestlers today were in the front row watching our shows. The Blue Meanie was a fan. This was a fan. That was a fan. So, yeah, I do think we get enough credit in that regard. What was the other thing you said about that besides the...
Just that WWE, ECW.
Oh, that, yes.
A lot of folks think that it was an attempt to crush the legacy of the original ECW.
I thought that. And the reason I think that is, and I've been told by plenty of people who've worked there over the years, that it made Vince crazy. That at his shows, even to this day, they would yell ECW, ECW during his big events he's spending a fortune for. And that made him crazy. So all of a sudden, now they're going to do a WWF version of ECW, where the first match they bring out a guy called the Zombie. Now, we didn't do characters. We did people being themselves, whether it be the Sandman, Sabu, whoever. That's who they were. So for them to do that is already going to be an insult right out of the gate. And then what does he do? He puts the belt on himself. Well, everybody hated Vince, the fans, he wanted them to. So the idea was, if he's wearing that belt, nobody's going to be yelling ECW anymore. And that was his goal, to have everybody turn off the ECW so you go back to doing business without it and then putting it down and it's over with. Didn't happen. It's insane. The legacy still goes on. They're still yelling it today. It's 35 years later. That's very humbling. And it's, I think it's terrific.
Yeah. And not only are they yelling ECW, 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 they're also known to bust out the Tod is God chant. What did you think when that started, and how did it, to your knowledge, originate?
There was a guy in the front row every show, and we called him Sign Guy because he brought tons of signs to every show. In fact, we used that as a model for Sign Guy Dudley. So Sign Guy Dudley would come out and have battling signs with this guy. Just to, again, incorporate the audience. We always incorporated the audience because they were a major part of the show and the production. So he had his signs, and sure enough, he came out one time with a sign that said "Tod is God," and I came out there and I said, "Next month we're going to have this match, this match, and this match." He started holding the sign up, and then the whole audience started just chanting it. That was just Philadelphia Arena. They just got right to it. So after that, when I would come out, that's what they would yell. That was the chant, and that's how we got to the name of the book and also the name of the podcast.
Yeah, it's super cool. Unfortunately, we recently lost, talk about a hardcore icon, but Sabu, under, sad circumstance. I actually sat beside him in the Fan Fest of One and Done. So it's quite shocking to hear that he passed the week before. But Ibzan is asking, which ECW death hit you the hardest, if you had to pick one?
Wow, so many too, but I would say it's a tie between Sabu and the Public Enemy. I mean, those three were all part of my inner circle. I did it. Everybody has circles in their own inner circles in the business. Mine was Sandman, Sabu, Too Cold Scorpio, and Bill Alfonso. Prior to that, years ago, was Public Enemy. But as I wrote on Facebook the day after he died, I wrote up there one thing. I said, my inner circle keeps shrinking. And that's the only comment I can make because it was so true. It hurt bad. I mean, I love Sabu like a brother. Fonzie the same way. I mean, we were both devastated by that. He traveled with him everywhere, and anywhere I was and he was. I mean, Sabu, we just paired right off. That's just the way it was. We were just tight like that, and he was such a good guy. He was the funniest guy in the entire locker room. No one believes that, but he was, because he didn't talk. But when he did talk, he was absolutely the funniest guy in the entire locker room. He was hysterical. Dry sense of humor. And one of the most giving guys you'll ever see in your entire life. He would give you the shirt off his back. He made sure the guys who were lesser than in terms of paydays, he would pay for their meals. He would do anything for the little guy and anything to help the promotion out. He never said no. He was such a good guy, really.
Do you think that the major companies, the so-called major companies, really missed the boat on Sabu, or was he just not going to fit into that corporate structure, so to speak?
They both tried. WWE brought him in. They want him to become the Sultan. Come on. They didn't want him doing his high-flying stuff. They want to make him the Sultan just because you wear baggy pants. I mean, no clue. Their booking department over there never had a clue how to use our guys right. And WCW made him an offer, and he was going to take it. And then that fell apart because Paul didn't want him to go leave, and he had some kind of a deal with him, and that fell apart there. Led to a big, falling out between the two of us, because I thought he had broken his neck in our company. The least we could do was go let him make 10 times what he's making from us. And he felt that would be disloyal. So we really differed on that. But so the other companies wanted him, but one didn't even know what to do with him, and the other never got that far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I understand there's a memorial or a celebration of Sabu's life coming up on, I believe, don't misquote me on this, but I think it's June 27th in the 2300 Arena. I just saw that.
I think it's the 25th.
Okay.
Wednesday the 25th, I believe. And this just got put together by, I guess, his sister and some other friends of his. So I just heard about it myself. They're doing one in Philly, one in Michigan, and I'm not sure where the third one's going to be. California, maybe. But they're doing 3 of them all together. They're raising money. They're paying tribute. I mean, he was universally loved. I mean, anybody in this business who ever met him loved him. And the fans, they paid to see him because he always gave them the show like above and beyond what anybody else would give him. Mm-hmm. He was an innovator. You can't say there are a lot of people who actually were innovators in a business like wrestling, but he was truly an innovator.
Mm-hmm. Well, that'll be something for the fans. I know there'll be big demand for that. I'm glad they're doing 3 of them, including one in Philly. One of the aspects in your book that I really was interested in, that really for the first time, there's a couple, but the first one is this whole mole in the locker room deal. And I remember in the rise and fall of ECW, even though you weren't involved, they seemed to be hinting to the fact that you were the dreaded mole in the locker room and working for WCW. But you went into some detail in the book about that whole situation, and I wanted to know, was that something you just chose not to really speak out on in any sort of detail for a while, or did that ever irk you that that was kind of a wink nudge thing that, oh, Tod Gordon's a mole, etc.?
Well, I know Eric Bischoff did a whole one of his podcasts saying, not only was he not an employee of his, he never met me. No, I never even talked to him. That was obviously insane. The guys who believed it, and they're set up to believe it, because the locker room had splintered. Everybody was trying to jump ship. And as I was ready to leave, which was in '97, having gotten to where I wanted to financially in terms of regaining what I put in. As I was leaving, he said, "Let's do this together. It was always ECW, us against the world." Well, we've lost that now because now we're getting more established. How about you say, we're going to say you were the mole, you were trying to, whatever. I'm going to bring the locker room together that way, and you'll have to take it being the bad guy. Can you handle that? I said, yeah, I can handle that. Of course, then he followed it up with, next year, we will bring you back as the biggest heel in the history of professional. And he could talk and orate like nobody. I said, don't make me any promises. I need to come back as a heel, whatever the case may be. I said, but I let it go. And then I forgot about it. It was nothing until I saw a DVD that they put out, the WWF, where, he never let the guys know. I didn't realize that. I mean, my guys knew. Sammy and Fonzie said, but they all knew the truth. But it didn't ruin it for the guys from New York. He was trying to keep them from leaving. But he never smartened them up. And I was stunned by that. I had no idea until I saw that DVD. And that also helped prompt me writing that book. Set the record straight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And speaking of setting the record straight, you really went into some detail about what happened with Paul. And again, it sounded, I don't know if it's accurate, but it sounded like he had a plan basically to usurp ECW from you from pretty early on. Is that what you take away from that? And why did you take the high road for so long and stay mum on that, while his reputation, his legacy seemed to just expand and grow?
It's a fair question. I'll answer that. First of all, if I really was trying to put the company under as it was presented, then all I had to do was take all the video footage with me, which I owned. Instead, I gave that to them so they could B-roll and say, "Oh, here's what happened a year ago with Shane Duggan," and that way he could refer back to things. Otherwise, they'd have no footage for TV. Well, that means I'm putting all these guys out of work. I don't want to put anybody out of work. This was my baby. I wanted to succeed and go on more and more forever and ever. It was always going to be my legacy. I don't see my legacy go under. But the guys didn't think that. They didn't figure that out. Meanwhile, they're watching tape of themselves that I own for the next whatever number of years on TV. But taking the high roads, that's just what I do. I don't like to get down and dirty and fight in the mud. That's just not who I am. I can afford to not be that way. I have other successes in my life. I don't have to be, getting the pat on the back. I don't need all that. I'm not complaining about when I get it, obviously, but I don't need it. Some people, their egos feed them to the point they're not satisfied unless they get that adulation. I mean, I'm still overwhelmed that a guy like you says you read the book twice. That humbles me. That means a lot to me. But if you didn't say that, my life wouldn't have changed. But I'm very appreciative in all the fact that he would say it. So it means a lot.
Do you think that Paul? I'm thinking about a point in the book where the reader can really sense your frustration. At ECW was at the stage where you kind of had to get bigger TV and thus bigger all around in terms of the business model, but you had an opportunity for, well, first of all, there was what I guess you concluded was a mythical investor, some individual out of New York that was going to pump a lot of money into the company. But then there was that opportunity that you had for a discussion with HBO, a high-level meeting with HBO about maybe getting on HBO. And my goodness, had that happened, we could be having a different conversation. Can you let the viewers know about that situation in and of itself? Because reading it was hard for me to understand how Paul could be conducting himself in the way that he did in any other way but to sabotage yourself.
Well, at that point, we're almost reached a breaking point, and I had a meeting with HBO set up. I had an uncle who was very involved in the higher ups there, and I was supposed to show up and make a presentation. And I told him, "Here's what I need. I need a highlight reel, done the tape. He's done. I'll get it out there and make sure it's there." And I said, "Why don't you get to me now so I can take it with me?" "No, it'll be there before you even get there." Okay, I go out to make the presentation. I got my briefcase, I got all the paperwork with me, and no tape shows up. So without a tape to show them exactly what I was talking about that we offered, what our product was, that if they didn't know about it, they're not going to get it from me just describing it. It will never do it justice. You can't say, "Here, describe ECW to someone who doesn't know what it is or what it actually more or less is." I expect them to get it. They watch it, they see the fans react the way they do and be part of it and chant, then they get it. So I was kind of left with nothing to show them, and it was not a good day for me. I was not happy about it. And I did feel that perhaps, because this was towards the very end, that this would have been the saving grace, and the fact that I was left high and dry, and then find out years later that Vince was feeding him money under the table. I just put a few things together, but you can't prove anything. But I'm just saying that was really the end right there.
Do you think that, and I know you don't specifically state this in the book, but the way that he was working for free for you under the guise of doing the stuff for Crockett before, only to scout talent, so to speak, get them ready for Crockett, and the fact that he refused multiple times for to take a salary, and then you, out of being the decent and fair businessman that you are, said, if you're not going to take a salary, how about a percentage of the company? Do you think he was after that all along, or is he that devious?
No, I really do think he was, didn't feel comfortable taking the money if I'm letting him bring guys in to try them out on my dime to get them into Crockett. When I first offered him the 49%, he said, no, I want 50, which I found interesting. I said, well, I can't give you 50. It's got to be 51.49 because someone always in a company has to have the last word. And someone's got to be able to say to you, no, we're not going to do a fire match because we're in a building that's like a tinderbox. It'll go up in flames in 2 seconds. Someone had to be the voice of reason. And you're phenomenal at what you do, but you also tend to go, for the ultimate extreme. And someone had to be the voice of reason. It would be 49. And that's the way it was, 51 and 49. How it changed from there, where he won the whole thing, I don't know. I can't tell you what his motivation, his mindset is. Oddly enough, 35 years later, I'm tired of talking about it already. I feel like that's why I didn't talk about it for all these years now. I feel like it's all I talk about. And I really don't want to. I'd rather talk about what's going on now, or other things from wrestling, other angles we did, things that were really hot and that we all love talking about. Or anything you want, talking about people dying. But I'm tired of talking about that same subject over and over again, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you probably put it to rest in the book, and that should be the final word. But it was definitely something that a lot of fans hadn't been privy to. You, after ECW, you worked with other companies like Pro Wrestling Unplugged and CZW.
I only did one show as a guest on CCW. I booked for 3PW and for and PWU.
How did those experiences compare with your time in ECW, and what, after the sequence of events that happened when you left, how did you maintain a desire to be involved in wrestling still?
Well, again, it's in your blood, and if you're loving it from the time you're 5 years old, you're not going to stop loving it just you got a falling out with someone or two, whatever the case may be. So I did take time off for a while and let the thing just fade away until I don't know how many years later it was that Meanie and Jasmine contacted me and said, would you like to come in and do this and try to book it a little bit? And I sort of got the bug back, and it's all it took. Then I started bringing my guys in. Scorpio came in a lot. Gary Wolf, the Pitbulls, came in a lot. Teddy and Johnny came in. So it was really bringing my own guys back in while ECW was still running. And then after it stopped, then I started bringing the Sandman in, all my guys. And so I got to not have that pressure of, am I going to make money? Am I going to lose money? Is this fight going to be on time? My only pressure was put on a great show, get paid, and see you next month. And that's something nice about that, too. I mean, there's a lot of pressure people don't run in running a company. It's not just putting on a show. It's dealing with the lighting company and the sound people and the people doing ticket sales. And there's so many different responsibilities. And back then, we were like one, dog and pony show. We were only a couple of us doing all these jobs. It should have been dealt out to 20 people, but we had the money to pay 20 people. So it really was overwhelming, to say the least. But we managed and kept it going and kept it alive. So when I was able to just be a booker, that was a much more enjoyable experience, certainly. But it's different than when you birthed it. And I birthed it, so that will always be my heart and soul.
Mm-hmm. Would you have any desire to, if there was a company, an upstart company or otherwise, that would be looking to take you on to book or all the other aspects of the business, would you be interested to at this stage of the game to commit to something like that again? Or I know you're quite active, you do a lot of appearances, etc., but that would be a whole new level of commitment.
Yeah, you're talking about a full-time job again. And Jack, I'll be honest with you, I finally reached that point in my life where I have no desire to do anything full-time like that. I'm coming up on my 70th birthday. It's a week away. And I'm ready to like settle down altogether. I'm ready to start thinking retirement more so than I'm thinking about starting a whole new project again. I don't have that energy level anymore. And it takes a lot of energy to do that. And just to deal with all those personalities. Oh my God. I mean, you're about 20, 30 different personalities you're trying to appease and also trying to, get over and help them. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights. And I'm sleeping fine now. So I kind of like the idea of never doing that again. And again, resting on my laurels and being very happy with that. And I love going to conventions. I love doing signings. I love signing the book and signing pictures and autographs. I love talking to the fans. I always did. I was always a fan guy. I mean, because I was a fan. I always say, by the way, I think the best people, both workers in the ring, bookers anywhere, are people who are fans first. If you weren't a real diehard fan, you could never put on a show that fans would love. I put on shows I wanted to see. And if I wanted to see them, usually my fans wanted to see them. My very opening night in the biggest show was Eddie, well, it's going to be Kevin Sullivan, but Kevin Sullivan, Terry Funk, Abdul the Butcher, and Stan the Lariat Hansen. Those four guys in the main event. Well, if you like hardcore wrestling, you're going to love that match. I couldn't wait to see it. I could have been just as happy in the front row watching it as I could have been in the back orchestrating. So those are that's what I shot for. So I like to think I was a very fan-friendly promoter in terms of things nobody had done before. Someone didn't show up because they missed a flight. First time anyone ever went in the ring said, I'll tell you what, this guy's not here. But rather than make you have to suck that up, watch the first half of the show. And if you want your money back, leave at halftime. People say, what? Yeah, first half free. You don't want to stay for the second half? Okay, I got you. That's my way of giving you something back. And they never last because the second half's going to have Terry Funk, Cebu, whatever it may be. They're not going anywhere. Cactus Jack. And we had shows from first match to last. We're like all semi-main events up to the one or two big matches. So that was just, like I said, I always thought fan first.
Speaking of fans, a fan on social media wanted me to ask you about, not in detail about the Carluzzo situation, which you cover in great detail in your book, but they were a fan of the promo that you cut about, as of midnight tonight, I've folded Eastern Championship Wrestling and created the ECW Extreme. How did you come up with that idea? Because I think it really tied what was seen in the ring with Shane throwing the belt down, et cetera. It really tied everything together. Was that something that just came out like that, or was that planned before the actual incident?
The finish was planned, amongst us, just Paul, myself, and Shane. No one else knew about it. So we knew we were going to do that. We knew we were going to go to Extreme, but we had to extricate ourselves from the whole NWA angle of it. So we had Dennis come on TV and do a promo unwittingly saying, Shane's not throwing that belt down. We're the NWA. Eastern works for the NWA. So what we say goes. Shane will suspend you. NWA, this will suspend you. So then naturally he left, and I cut the promo saying, well, all right, we quit the NWA. Now meet world champion of Extreme Championship Wrestling. Now we're going to have a world championship instead of a local championship. And that was brilliantly done, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the highlights of the era, in my opinion. A lot of commentators talk about how ECW was revolutionary and compare it to what's happening today in the business, where there's a lot of old school fans that are lapsed and just don't watch a lot of the current big two, if you will, product. Do you think that something like ECW is even possible to happen again in, say, the future, given the major focus on wrestling? We've reduced house shows. We charge $14,000 a ticket for a premium live event. Or was that just the right? Was that lightning in a bottle? Was that the right?
1,000%, lightning in a bottle. It just clicked. It wasn't planned. It wasn't, thought out how we're going to keep growing. It just happened. We were at the right place at the right time, and the right time being that everybody else was doing crap. Everybody else was doing, nothing TV. cartoon, as you will. And I have people to this day say to me, you know, it's amazing. And these are wrestlers now, retired wrestlers too, that you're in a small little group, but when you threw that NWA belt down, the entire industry from, soup to nuts, we're talking about it. It was an incident that literally, even though there's only a couple hundred people there, whatever, 1,000 people there, it became worldwide news. Now, all of a sudden, people who hadn't even heard of ECW were going, what's this ECW thing? They all wanted to find out what it was. And that springboarded us a lot. It gave us a whole new audience. It brought us, fame and notoriety in places that had never heard of us before. And we just took that and, grew from there. But yeah, that was a little group like that to be worldwide with something that doesn't happen. And that was just right place, right time. Luck. I give it a lot to luck. A lot of skill involved, but a lot of luck. So could it happen today? If something innovative came up that was completely different, I don't know what that would be. I mean, maybe someday we're going to fly. Who knows? Whatever it may be, it could happen again, but not in the form that it happened there.
Mm-hmm. Are you? Do you stay up on or before you? Now that you're doing a podcast, that may be part of what you cover. But were you following the current, at least AEW and WWE, and were you a fan of what you were seeing on television?
Okay, I'll be honest with you. I really don't watch AEW. I'm not familiar with the product much at all. When it first came out, I watched, and all I saw was guys no selling. I said, how are these guys climbing a ladder, getting thrown off the top of the ladder, and jumping back up and doing another spot? What are they doing? They're killing any believability again. You got to have credibility, or it doesn't makes no sense to me. And all those guys were doing it. It was triple flip. It was like watching a lucha show without even having the lucha abilities. It was terrible. No one sold a damn move. They were hit a finisher, get up, hit another finisher, I mean, what's the point of having a finisher if you're going to have to use 10 of them in one match? It made no sense. And as far as WWE is concerned, yeah, I followed it, and I still do. And I thought that for a period there, like a year ago, it was riveting television. Like the whole Bloodline storyline, when they bring in Sami Zayn, and then is Jey Uso going to turn on Roman, and then is Jimmy, and each week the story evolved and grew and grew. And that's the way you captivate an audience. You want them to come back and see what's going to happen next. And they did that. It was so good. It was like you couldn't wait for the next show, Monday or Friday. Not what happened with Triple H's booking. All of a sudden, I know, let's take Bronson. I'm sorry, not Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed, heavyset guy.
The big guy.
Yeah, does 6 splashes off the top, 6 on Seth Rollins, the most vicious attack they've shown on TV there, and God knows how long. Now, any explanation? They're working as a team. What? How could they lose their continuity like that? How insulting is that? They don't even explain it. Oh, because Paul's there, so that he'll be there too. Why? Because he came back from being injured. I mean, none of it made sense, and none of it was explained. When you insult the fans' intelligence, you lose fans. And now I find the product extremely boring. Now, again, if it was as good as it was a year ago and boring now, they can get back to making it interesting again. But they got Roman Reigns where he shows up once every 3 or 4 months for a pay-per-view. How are you going to care about him one way or another? When he's on TV every week in a storyline, you cared. There's no continuity. There's no excitement right now. The whole Cena thing is the worst thing I've ever seen in that organization. How they could bring him back and try to turn him heel and have him win matches, with a kick to the nuts. I mean, come on. And then have Cody, who they spent a fortune on building for over a year and a half, made him a great fighting champion. He loses to a nothing shot and disappears. Doesn't come back the following week to say, I want my revenge, or following week to say, I can't, anything. He doesn't even do a promo. They just kept him off TV for a month with no explanation. It's so insulting. How do you make this guy superhuman for a year and a half and then have him disappear? I mean, it was just, the booking right now is horrendous there.
Yeah, they definitely have a continuity problem. Yeah.
Yeah, terrible.
Definitely. A lot of folks say a lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened under Vince.
Vince had his own faults as a booker. Let's be honest. I can't buy that for a second. The whole kiss my ass club and the whole it's all about me, Vince, and now I'll be the ECW champion. Now he had, let's make it Duke the Dumpster. Let's make everybody a race car. Let's give everybody some character they're not that they don't even fit into. Vince had plenty of faults as a booker, believe me. I thought when Triple H first took the book, he was soaring. He was doing great. And now I don't know if he's just wrapped up too much in politics or whether it's The Rock or TKO, whatever it is. Does he not have control anywhere? I don't know. I mean, I'm not backstage. I couldn't tell you, but boy, does it suck now.
Well, as you pointed out in your book too, wrestling fans can be fickle, and really a booker has a shelf life, and about a year and a half, it's hard to keep those juices flowing consistently.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
But I think you could do more than a year and a half. That was more, pardon me, when it was territories, and Abdullah Butcher from one territory to the next thing. They got away from that, which is great, and they got down to the big two. But yeah, you can last a lot longer than that amount of talent they have. I mean, what about Randy Orton? Guy's one of the best athletes, one of the best wrestlers I think I've ever seen in my life. What are they doing with him? They bring him back to this big push, and then it doesn't matter. I mean, it's insane. How do they waste the kind of talent that they waste there? They're some of the best athletes ever, and they waste them.
Well, it'll be interesting to keep following your podcast and get your insights on the product as it evolves. But before we close with where the fans can purchase your book and follow your podcast and follow you, I think a good way to close off the interview is for fans that never saw ECW live, the original ECW, and I actually went to several shows there in the arena as a younger man, certainly very, very much something that you never forget. But for those that didn't get that experience, what do you hope that they take away from reading your book, and also about the spirit, and I think that's an appropriate term, and legacy of ECW?
Well, thank God for the internet, number one, because you see almost any show we ever did. They're all over the internet now. And I'm really thankful for that. So that really would always keep the legacy alive. Of course, had we had an internet when I was running ECW, who knows where we would have gone? I mean, if we had charged anyone $1 or $2 to watch one of our monthly arena shows, we probably would have had 100,000 buys a month, because that product would have sold anywhere. But there was no internet. People were tape traders, VHS tapes. That's how they knew about us. It takes a lot longer to grow that way than it is to have a one-night thing and boom, the whole world seen you. So I think if there was an internet and we were doing that, yeah, I don't think the company would have gone out of business, and I'd still be running it probably, or I would have retired and passed it off. I hope that they read the book and they learn a lot about behind-the-scenes stuff. I had a friend of mine, not a friend, but a gentleman I know, say to me, as I was reading the book, I kept stopping and going on the internet to see who was who. I want to see who the Sandman guy was. I didn't watch wrestling back then. And he's looking him up and say, "Oh my God, okay." And then you read the book and go back and forth. The fact that they had a chance to do that certainly makes it a more enjoyable experience for them to read the book or to listen to a podcast. Mm-hmm. And Jack, I appreciate everything you say and do also. Don't ever think otherwise.
I appreciate that coming from yourself. I would really encourage the fans, if you haven't, to pick up the book. But where can they get the book? I'm assuming everywhere. And
at this point, you can only get them on Amazon and at Barnes and Noble. Other smaller venues have all exhausted their supplies. I will bring them to the conventions. Whenever I can get more copies myself, so I can sign them for people. I also sign them when they bring them into the conventions themselves. But yeah, you can get them. Amazon definitely has them, and they can even reduce the price a little bit, so it's even more viable. And yeah, that's where you can buy them right now.
And where does your podcast, when does your podcast drop, and the network it's on, and your presence on social media?
Every Friday, 6:00. I knew you were going to ask me the name of it. It's Heat.
Podcast Heat.
Podcast Heat. Yeah, I'm sorry, just learning all this new stuff. And now he's got me on X and he's got me on Instagram, which are all new to me. So I'm getting a lot of help with that, in terms of how to post, when to post, who's posting. So he's doing a lot of that work for me, which eventually I'll be able to take over myself when I learn it. But for now, he's doing all that for me, to be honest with you. And the only thing I'm really doing myself has been the Facebook, which that's the only thing I ever was on. But I'll answer any questions. I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk. I'm wide open. But the podcast will be every Friday. It'll release early in the morning, so they have the weekend to watch it. And hopefully they'll keep watching. The audience will grow like you've been doing with yours.
Well, I certainly would highly recommend both of that, and it should be said. One, you are one of the most open and genuine individuals in the business, and you could tell that you're definitely a fan-friendly individual. Again, thank you for receiving myself and DJ Immortal at Carver Reed, and thank you very much for coming on the show today. We're going to keep in touch and wish you all the success with your new endeavors.
We'll always keep in touch, Jack. You're my guy.
Appreciate it. Well, fans, that's it for this special edition of the Cheap Heat Productions podcast with the legendary Tod Gordon. Make sure that you like this video if you've enjoyed it, and continue to subscribe, because we are growing this channel with high quality pro wrestling, classic pro wrestling content such as this. Until next time, take care, everybody. Thank you for watching this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on